Hello Mind Mappers and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be going over The Success System That Never Fails by W.Clement Stone. A clickbait title if there ever was one, but this book was actually packed full of a lot of what I think is actionable advice that you're going to be able to implement in your life. Let's get directly into the introduction where I've pulled out a quote that I believe gives us a good overview of what we can expect to learn today. Inside the book, he says, an old Hindu legend states that when the gods were making the world, they said, "Where can we hide the most valuable treasures so that they will not be lost? How can we hide them so that the lust and greed of men will not steal or destroy them? What can we do to be assured that these riches will be carried on from generation to generation for the benefit of all mankind?" So in their wisdom, they selected a hiding place that was so obvious that it would not be seen. And there they placed the true riches of life, endowed with the magical power of perpetual self-replenishment. In this hiding place, these treasures can be found by every living person in every land who follows the success system that never fails. And as you read this book, read it as if I were your personal friend writing to you, and you alone. For this book is dedicated to you and all who seek the true riches of life. So this is kind of an interesting little fable that he starts out with. Unimaginable riches hidden just inside of plain sight. W.Clement Stone led quite an interesting life. He was a businessman, a philanthropist, and an author. He built an insurance company and gave away hundreds of millions of dollars over his lifetime. And plus, he also wrote a book with someone you might know, Napoleon Hill, who's one of the most successful self-help authors of all time. So if he has a success system, there might just be a few things that we could learn from it. Maybe creating clickbait titles is one of them. That's what we're going to be diving into today. And the overarching premise of this book in particular is that what we desire is already within our reach. We've been endowed with an amazing tool, which is our mind, that will allow us to succeed beyond our wildest dreams if we simply know how to use it and follow this success system that never fails. Before we get into the next points of the book, I wanted to talk a little bit about mind mapping. If you're new to the channel, you can get the most out of these mind maps by actually following along. The process of how I mind map plus all 100 plus mind map templates, including this one, are just at the link down below. Following along will help you learn more, remember better, and apply these books to your life. And if you're interested in learning more in a multimedia format, you can visit my website at themindmapguide.com, where we've got full-length text versions of these summaries as well, and a bunch of different masterclasses to help you shortcut the line to learning. Our first big idea that I've highlighted in this cream color here, because I believe it's such an important idea, maybe one of the most important of the entire book, is the 3 steps. A small drop of ink makes thousands, perhaps millions, think, wrote Byron and Don Juan. And that's what I thought as I began to write the manuscript for this book. For its purpose is to motivate the reader to learn and use 3 simple, easily understood concepts that must be used by any person for continuous success in any human activity. Herein lies the essence of this work. For the person who uses these ingredients in combination in any specific activity cannot fail. Inspiration to action is our first. That which motivates you to act because you want to act. Know-how. The particular techniques and skills that consistently get results for you when applied. It is the proper application of knowledge. Know-how becomes habit through actual repetitive experience. Activity knowledge. Knowledge of the activity, service, product, methods, techniques, and skills at which you are particularly concerned. So these are the 3 steps that cannot possibly fail. And before we get too deep into the steps, I love the old school style of writing here inside this book. This is definitely a book from a different era than we're living in right now, for sure. There aren't any specific scientific studies, complex theories, or long words that I can't pronounce in the video. It's really just simple, down-to-earth, real-life study techniques that have worked. And I love that because these are the types of things that we can watch a video on today and have implemented in our own life tomorrow. So what are the steps here? What are we talking about? Well, step number 1 is that we need to be inspired to take action. We need to be authentically and deeply invested in the action that we're going to take before we can even really start. See, if we're starting from a spot where we're not inspired to action, but we're taking action because we feel like we have to, it's not going to lead us to success in the long run. Step number 2 is this is the learning process, right? So the learning process in action. We need to find what is and what isn't working and consistently optimize each day. So instead of trying techniques that someone else told us about, instead of reading a bunch of books and following the process of what someone else has done before us, we need to be kind of taking action every single day, keeping track of what's working and what isn't, and learning by ourselves, learning in real time, rather than trying to follow what someone else before us has done. Step number 3, Cal Newport would call this being so good that they can't ignore you. And it's all about becoming great in your chosen field. You need to know specific knowledge about the specific thing that you are trying to accomplish. And again, that can only be found through this learning process, the particular techniques and skills that get results when applied. So again, you can read books, you can read studies, and etc. But really what's happening is you are using that knowledge in your own life and learning during the process of trying to accomplish something. And that's what learning truly is, in my opinion. And that's the only way that we can learn anything worthwhile in this world, is to gather specific knowledge through action, through failure, and through learning on a daily basis. Our next idea here is all about formula. What is important to you is that you reduce to a formula, preferably in writing, the principles that you learn from your success experiences and your failures, in whatever activities you may be interested. The most potent tool you can have in the steady pursuit of success is a written record of your daily habits. I'm going to read that one again. The most potent tool that you can have in the steady pursuit of your success is a written record of your daily habits. Correctly kept, this record will be a mirror of every effort and every action of your day-to-day living. It will, with amazing vitality, enable you to redirect yourself. So this idea here of formulas is all about how we're going to get where we want to be. And Stone gives us what I think is the first real gem of the book here. We've talked about the 3 different steps, but how does this one fit in? The idea is that we should distill what we know works for us into a formula. Essentially, the top things that we need to do each day, week, month, that lead to the success that we need in any chosen endeavor. Personally, the way that I've been doing this recently is using a software tool. Paper would work just fine as well, and of course that was all they had back when this book was written, but software allows you to really break down what's working and what isn't. So step number 1 for me is I think about my objectives. What do I want to accomplish in the next year or so? Ideally, these things are measurable. That can be broken up into smaller parts. So getting 25,000 YouTube subscribers becomes getting 1,000 new YouTube subscribers every single month, for example. And what I do is I write these things down, and I want to keep them somewhere that I'll see them very often. So every time I log into my dashboard of this software, which is every single day, I see those goals, I see those numbers so that I can keep track of them. Step number 2 is let's break those things down. And I already did this with the YouTube subscribers, but what needs to happen here is what's going to happen this month, what's going to happen this quarter for you to accomplish that main objective of potentially a year or so. I like a year as a time frame. Some systems might call these the key results, right? Objectives and key results, or OKRs, is something that a lot of companies use. And they just let you know that you're on the right track, let you know that you're moving in the direction that you should be moving in. Step number 3 is let's go a little bit further. What leads to those key results? Of course, that's where the daily actions come in. See, daily actions are the things that we can actually control. We know whether we did our workout today, we know whether we read for a certain period of time, we know whether we meditated. These little daily actions that lead towards the key results, which eventually leads towards our main objective. These are the things that we need to be paying attention to, because if we get too deep into the objectives or the key results, we can start to feel like we're not making any progress. So what I suggest is let's create a formula for what you need to do each day in order for you to accomplish your key results. For me, I use checkboxes in the software tool to accomplish this. Bonus is that this lets me look at my past results to find trends, and if I hit my key results, great. Obviously, the things that I've been checking off are leading towards those key results. But if I don't hit those key results, rather than beating myself up like I used to do, I can now look back and say, okay, I checked off these checkboxes, or these checkboxes didn't get checked. What can I change to make those checkboxes easier to check off? Or what other checkboxes do I need to add for me to hit my key results the next time? So really important to keep a log of what you're working on and kind of your main daily habits in order to kind of roll up into those key results and of course eventually lead to the objectives and lead to the overarching purpose of our lives, which I believe is becoming the best version of ourselves. Our next idea here is all about fear, and something that Napoleon Hill talks about quite a lot, and definitely W.Clement Stone talks about inside of this book, is fear, and the different types of fear that stop us from playing at our highest level. I remember that as a boy, I was so timid that when we had company, I would go into another room, and during a thunderstorm, I would hide under the bed. But one day, I reasoned, if lightning is going to strike, it will be just as dangerous whether I am under the bed or in any other part of the room. I decided to conquer this fear. My opportunity came and I took advantage of it. During a thunderstorm, I forced myself to go to the window and look at the lightning. An amazing thing happened. I began to enjoy the beauty of the flashes of lightning through the sky. And today, there is no one who enjoys a thunderstorm more than I do. So, what can we learn from a child who's afraid of thunder? Of course, hopefully we've all moved past our fear of thunderstorms, and this might end up feeling kind of like a silly story. But I think, like with most of this book, it's actually very deep and insightful. Simple allegories really help Stone show us what he's talking about. And he's not using, again, those words that we can't understand in the studies and etc. He says essentially that the fear that Stone felt during those thunderstorms, for us, it's completely ridiculous as adults. But remember when you were a child, maybe it wasn't thunder, but there was something that you were afraid of that now you're not. And looking back, it might seem silly, even though, even like your fear was kind of made up and it's not something that you should actually be afraid of. So what can we learn here? Well, in the end, all of the fear that we're feeling as adults, maybe public speaking, maybe losing money, all these different types of fear that we feel on a daily basis, they're all equally as made up as the thunder. They're ways for our mind to try and keep us safe, and most times they have very little tether to reality, right? Public speaking, you might be laughed at, but who really cares about that? Losing money, not that big a deal, you can always make it back, but those things really feel like things that we should be afraid of. And we're justifying them, similar to justifying the thunder underneath the bed. Maybe the thunder won't hit me underneath the bed, etc. So additionally, these things are often hiding behind a truly beautiful experience. We're watching the thunderstorm, or for example, public speaking may become a passion for you if you just get over the fear. Losing money and the fear of losing money often keeps us from taking risks, specifically in our business. I know I'm guilty of two different things, thinking that public speaking was scary when now I truly enjoy it, and thinking that losing money was the worst thing in the world when really it was just holding me back from investing in myself and my business. Our next point here I've highlighted again in this money cream color, and it's suggestion. Each time I say to you, try to do the right thing because it is right, that's a suggestion from me to you. Each time you think or say to yourself, try to do the right thing because it's the right thing, that's self-suggestion. Each time your subconscious mind flashes to your conscious mind, try to do the right thing because it's the right thing, that is autosuggestion. It's also important to know, suggestion comes from the outside, your environment. Self-suggestion is automatic and purposeful. It's purposefully controlled from within. Autosuggestion acts by itself, unconsciously, like a machine that in the same way reacts from the same stimulus. During the coming week, every morning and every evening, and frequently throughout the day, repeat, try to do the right thing because it's the right thing. And then when you're faced with temptation, this self-motivator will flash from your subconscious to your conscious mind. When it does, immediately act and do the right thing. In this way, through repetition, you will form a habit, a good habit, that will help you make your future. Your future depends upon character, and character depends upon successfully overcoming temptations. So how do we learn to overcome our fear and learn something new? Well, the science in stone tells us that the power of repetition, specifically with habits and thought patterns and reshaping our minds, is very, very important. This tool, repetition, especially as adults, is really the way that we can make lasting changes in our mind. I was reading something the other day, and it was talking about how the older we get, the more repetition we need to create a new habit or to remember something and make it kind of easy to recall. So the older we get, and especially as adults, repetition should be a really useful tool inside of our tool belt. These changes can cause us to act differently, right? So kind of Stone has come to this point where he's talking about autosuggestion, and he's talking about kind of just repeating a thought in our mind over and over and over again. And it might seem simple on the surface, but really what he's doing is he's training a new thought pattern. And he realizes that the more repetition that you do, the easier it is going to be to have that thought come up in the moment. These changes that change to that thought pattern actually causes us to act differently. And those actions or those behaviors create different results in our lives. Broken down here, it really is just the learning process that I laid out inside the Learning Masterclass. Step number 1, let's intake information. This could be reading, listening, or speaking with someone else. Step number 2, this is the tough part. Follow through with that information repeatedly. Kind of continually, use this thought pattern, continually take that action, continually use the thing that you learned, the formula, etc. Step number 3 is the mind takes over. And this is when actions start to be automatic versus manual. And that should be the end goal of almost any learning process. You don't want to have to be consciously using the tool that you're trying to learn every single time. You want to get it on autopilot so that even when you're tired, even when you're kind of not paying attention, the tool will take effect rather than you having to consciously conjure up the willpower to use the tool. And that's all inside the Learning Masterclass and the Habits Masterclass. You can find those on the mindmapguy.com. I really recommend you go and check them out. They're 2-hour-long masterclasses where I've taken dozens and dozens and dozens of books, and I've put them into a 2-hour-long masterclass, multimedia format. You've got kind of text, mind map, video, audio, and you can even get video coaching from me on those particular topics. Find them on the mindmapguy.com. Our final point here is all about dissatisfaction. And, of course, dissatisfaction is an interesting word. We're going to take a different look at it than you might be thinking. The book, Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude, says, the right mental attitude is most often comprised of plus characteristics, symbolized by such words as integrity, faith, hope, optimism, courage, initiative, generosity, tolerance, tact, kindliness, and good common sense. On this, you and I can agree. Yet the most wonderful person in the world will not make progress until he is dissatisfied. So we're talking about all of these wonderful kind of aspects of human beings. And then he says the most wonderful person in the world will not make progress until he is dissatisfied, wholesomely dissatisfied. For the inspirational dissatisfaction that converts the magic of desire into reality. Every growing organism grows into maturity, levels off, and dies unless there is new blood, new activity, new ideas, says Edward R. Dewey. All the world's progress in every field of activity has been the result of action by men and women who experienced inspirational dissatisfaction, never by those who were satisfied. For dissatisfaction is man's driving force. Inspirational dissatisfaction is the result of RMA, the right mental attitude. With the wrong mental attitude, the driving force of dissatisfaction can be injurious. To be dissatisfied, you must want something. And if you want something badly enough, you'll do something. You'll try to get it. So again, we talked about this in step number 1, but desire leads to action. And before you start to take action, it's really important to cultivate a deep desire. Because even if you can get past that first 14-day period, that 30-day period of exercising, of working on your business, of reading every day, or whatever the thing you want to do is, if you don't have a true desire, it's never going to become a full-blown habit, part of your identity. And this is something that we see everywhere. It's playing out in people who work themselves to death to buy nice things. It's playing out in people who are lazy because they prefer comfort. The whole world is driven by desire, and that's for better or for worse. So what I'm doing here, and I think probably this is a little bit of an aside from what W.Clement Stone is trying to say inside of this, is we've got two different sides of desire. We've got kind of this desire where it's got this negative aspect, where people are constantly trying to use these external tools to get themselves to be motivated, right? This nice house, this status in society, all these external desires of things that we just want kind of to externally validate ourselves. But what can we really do with this information? Because we've seen Sonia Lyubomirsky talk about this, and so many different authors talk about how those external drivers don't lead us to true and lasting happiness. So what can we do with this information of desire leading to action, which I think is at its core pretty true? Well, the yogis might encourage us to release our desires, and they might not be wrong. And some success authors, Napoleon Hill, might say that we want to cultivate our desires and let them really drive us. And honestly, they might not be wrong either. But for me, the answer is somewhere in the middle. Knowing that we're driven by desires, and have you thought about what those desires might be for you? Are they true to who you want to be? Will you be proud to have chased them throughout your life? One thing that I've been thinking about quite a lot recently as I'm preparing for the Purpose Masterclass that I'm going to be presenting to you is, what is the true purpose? At its core, what's the true purpose? And what I've seen from a lot of the books that I've read and kind of from really mulling on this in my own life is the true purpose of our life to really chase those external desires? Or is the true purpose of our life to play this infinite game that's out there, that's available to everyone at any time, of becoming and embodying the best version of ourselves moment to moment to moment? Something to think about. Until the next video, I want to thank you for being with me here today. If you're interested in more books or more information coming from me, you can find me at themindmapguy.com. And if you have any feedback on the new thumbnails, if you have any feedback on the new book covers that I'm doing, please leave it in the comments down below. Thank you for being with me here today, and I hope to see you in the next one.